Nigel, are you with us?
I'm with you. Yep.
Oh, good.
Yep.
Nigel's with
Two
us.
of us now.
On the Q&A panel. Well, I think there were a couple of questions. I don't know whether they've come through to. Let me just have a look. Let me just read a couple of the questions. Let me read the first one that came through from Richard. Richard Hagan kindly sent a question through saying, what does the Bible say about a man as opposed to being a woman, aside from marriage and leadership in the church? Let me just read that again, because I'm not sure whether Nigel would have seen that. So it says, what does the Bible say about being a man as opposed to being a woman, aside from marriage and leadership in the church? You got any thoughts on that one, Nigel?
Yeah, I did pick it up. So I've had a little time to think about this. I guess really from my sphere, it's being a man sharing your faith with other men. I was privileged with having the opportunity to get involved in contact sports and non-contact sports with other guys, and I found that was a great means, both in the activity itself and then in organizing such activities, to be able to be a man in a man's environment and having a real opening to share one's faith. I'm not saying I did it very well, but that was one area. I think in also of joining clubs, things. Hobby is almost a forgotten word these days, and I regret that because my children would say I'm a man of hobbies, and it provides again an opportunity to meet with other people, with other guys. So just a flavour of that. We've just moved to Ashford. Near to us is the Kent and East Sussex Railway, based in Tenterden. I'm rather keen of railways, so actually together with my wife, we both actually applied to become volunteers, because it gave us an opportunity to meet with other people that we wouldn't normally meet with. Yeah, I'm just looking forward, once it opens up again, to be able to meet with guys, get to know them as a bloke, and to share my faith with them. So I do think in an evangelistic aspect, many opportunities that we have to get alongside men, and we should take those and make the best use of them as we're helped by God's Spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ollie's back. There are other ways of sucking out the Q&A panel, Ollie, if you know, you don't have to...
Sorry, my internet just completely dropped out, so I'm sorry about that.
We were just looking at Richard's question that you may have seen earlier on, about what does the Bible say about being a man as opposed to a woman, aside from leadership and marriage. And Nigel was just sharing with us, what it is to be a witness, outside of the church and in these hobbies, and to be, sort of like, around the place. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that. And I'm not chairing this. You're chairing this, by the way, so you can take over now. But
no. I love this. I love this swap of roles. That's brilliant. I think, obviously there are some real specific things about the difference between men and women in terms of in the family and in the church. But I think those are linked to kind of some basic principles that are laid down right at the beginning. I think that's observation. It's drawing our attention to the fact that there is differentiation between the two sexes, and I think you see that padded out a bit more in Genesis 2. And there's a really good, if you wanted to look at this a bit more, this is available through 10 of those. It's called Primer. It's a journal that comes out a couple of times a year. So they did one on gender called True to Form. There's a brilliant essay in there. It's written by a guy called Alistair Roberts. I'd recommend that to you. But I think, you know, the principles there are that when you look at Adam, you know, he is made first. And that, again, is not an accident, and it's something that's picked up by Paul in 1 Corinthians 7 and 1 Timothy 2. So there's a kind of a headship that's there in creation. So it's not just about, you know, my view would be that whilst there are specific commands given about the role of a man within church and within the family, that they come out of basic creation principles. So they can't just be limited to those things. How you work them out in practice, I think, is a different issue. But I think the principles are that, you know, there is some sort of leadership, headship role of men that comes from creation. Adam was created first. Adam is made the head. You know, a woman comes from man. I think, you know, Adam is given the task of naming. That's a kind of subduing, exercising control thing that he's given. Then the woman is subsequently created as his helper. Adam is given the task of guarding the garden, and he's the one that's given the law. And in fact, he's held responsible for the law not being kept. So I think, you know, those are the kind of the principles there. There's a leadership, a protection, a provision that's given to the man. How you work that out outside of the church and outside of the home, I think you've got to try and figure that out. But those are the principles you've got to reflect on. And I'm reluctant to give examples because people jump on the examples and try and unpick the examples. It's the principles. How are you as a man seeking in your life, within the family, within the church, but also everywhere else you go, to live out those principles in a way that is attractive and in a way that is positive, and a way that you're not embarrassed about. That's my 2 penneth worth.
Yeah, and Paul says a lot, doesn't he? He encourages Timothy and Titus in living well and leading their households, and and sort of setting an example. And so I, as a man, look at that and take my sort of encouragement from that, and as a way to live as a godly man. Similarly, the stuff you see in the Old Testament with Joshua being encouraged to be strong and courageous and standing in the gap and doing those things which, you know, we were created to do. So that's a very broad brush sort of response, but I certainly look at those things and think, yeah, this is what God has called me as a man to do in my life, you know, and I mustn't shy away from it. Yeah,
I thought the evangelism bit, I heard Nigel picking up on that, just so I came back in as well. I think is really important. You know, that work of filling the earth now with image bearers of God is done through the gospel. You know, that's the Matthew 28 thing. I think we got to take a lead on that, and I think I think often as men we can be slow to do that. And so I think, yeah, if anything comes out of this conference, if we all take a step forward in trying to be on the front foot with our evangelism, that'll be a worthwhile outcome. We had another question. I think Gavin was talking about focusing on the holiness of your family and not necessarily their happiness. And a good question that's come in is, you know, do we have any advice if our families, our wives or children, don't want to be holy? What's our advice there? You guys are both older than me and have older children, so you can go first.
Michael. Right, I got my oldest boy on this, so I've got to be a little bit careful.
Oh, right.
I will ask him instead then.
Yeah, just so if your family don't, that, I mean, it's persistence, isn't it? You know, it's prayer, of course, you know, and it's persistence. It's living an example as a godly husband and father. It's discipline in the best sort of sense of the word, and I think it is example much as anything else. It really is. If they see you devoted to those things and being intentional about those things. And we used to say at CVM that, and it was a stat that we had to sort of stop using because we couldn't source it properly. But we used to say that, if you lead a man to Christ, if you lead a man to Christ, in 97% of the cases, the whole family will follow, as opposed to leading a woman to Christ or leading a child to Christ. The percentage difference between we've just been muted and unmuted. That's good. I don't know how much of that you heard, but the likelihood of the whole family coming to faith in the Lord Jesus was greater when the man first came to Christ himself. So, that's quite compelling. Was the thing I think that compelled me to go into ministry with CVM, because if you can win the heart of a man, then you've got a far better chance of a whole family coming to Christ.
Yeah, if I can just pick up on particularly the area of example, I sort of totally back up what Michael's said there. In church, I think we tend to be well behaved. In our work environments, we might be well behaved. At home, I always hesitate saying this, so you can let my hair down. Yeah, it's at home that our wives and our families, if we're married and been blessed with children, see us in the off guard moments, it's an area which I've really struggled with. I'm passionate about sport. I get very upset with referees making wrong decisions. I'm glad I didn't watch the England-Wales rugby last week, because I think I would have probably gone mad. But if you did ask my son Malcolm now, he'd probably sort of say, yeah, Dad wasn't great on that occasion. The referee got an earful. And we are human. We're still sinful. We're still being sanctified by the Spirit. So there's a sense where we should not beat one another up, ourselves up rather, over these lapses. But we've got to pray for a clear conscience, an open conscience, that the Spirit is just sort of working in our hearts and lives, picking up those areas and seeking to do something about them in our lives, so that our example is as best, by God's help, as it possibly can be, and that to back up our teaching. So again, as someone involved in Christian ministry, it's tough. We can be there in the pulpit on a Sunday saying this, and then come back home. Our biggest critics in that sense are those at home with us.
Yeah. I think I just add to that model grace. I think, as you said, we're imperfect ourselves. We're not as holy as we should be, and we need to admit to that, because our kids, our wife see it, and actually that can be quite a heart melting thing when your dad or husband comes to you and says, look, I didn't get that right. I'm sorry, and I'm trying to do it the best I can. I model grace, and model grace to them. When they aren't being holy. I think I had an episode yesterday. One of my children, they lost it, kicked off, said some stuff to their mum they shouldn't have said. You know, and I've got a choice there. I can just say to them, look, you know, God says you're to obey your mother and father. He's put us in charge. Do as you're told. Which, you know, I might have done initially, but you then go back and say, you know, actually, you know, God's given us to you as a gift to love you and care for you, and to try and shape your heart in a way that is the best for you and brings glory to him, and that's all we're trying to do. I think there's ways we can positively do it as well, but I speak from very limited experience, so this is all theory, and you can have my son on and here in 20 years time and see how we went. There you go. And pray, keep praying. Holiness is a work of the Spirit. So keep praying for your wife and your family. My chat function in all of this internet stuff has gone off, Michael, so I don't know if there are any other questions.
Yeah, there's a few. Let me just have a look. We've got a few from Jeff's been sending through here. So that was one from Richard, that was one from Gavin, on the subject of Gavin. Here's one. In terms of reaching out to men, or indeed anyone, to what extent should we aim for this to be local church-led, i.e. a ministry in which we encourage the men to be involved through church-organised activities, compared with pursuing opportunities for personal evangelism, bearing in mind that many men spend more time at work than in their local communities?
Yeah, I mean, I think this one, if I kick it off, is a both and. I really want to see a particular emphasis one way or the other, the expense of the other. So it's good for men to be involved in their local church as a group of men in evangelistic opportunities and activities. I think that's brilliant, because there is the strength and encouragement we get when we serve the Lord together. But equally, I have to face the fact that we will reach more men outside of church activities. And therefore, we must also take that opportunity up. So again, thinking of our time in Ebbsfleet, that with our close neighbours, the guys there, they would not come to church. I couldn't even get them along to, well, apart from a Christmas carol service, to a church-based activity. But to be able to spend time with them as individuals, I was able to, and so that was a great encouragement. So yeah, both and.
Yeah, and it's been particularly difficult during this 12 months, hasn't it? Because all the things we would normally have been doing, we've not been able to do so easily. Although one of the blessings, and there have been blessings, has given us the opportunity to one-on-one with people, and that is powerful, isn't it? Building relationship, getting people's confidence and trust in these times, so that we can have that opportunity to share the gospel with guys. Very powerful in a one-to-one situation. And as for church, I mean, of course, ultimately we want guys to come along, but that's probably the end of the sort of program, if you can use that clumsy word, because most guys will run a mile if you invite them to church without having done a suitable amount of preparatory work in sort of hanging out with them, with, as I said, building relationships with them, doing normal stuff with them, sort of quashing that idea that we're all a bit weird. We all wear socks and sandals and eat muesli. Not that there's anything wrong with doing either of those things, of course, but yeah, it is about getting alongside guys and building trust and building relationships. So I agree with Nigel that both things have great value, but in these times, in the last 12 months, the only real opportunity we've had is one-on-one with folk, or Zoom stuff and online stuff, and that's been good.
Yeah,
I'd back all of that up, and
I think, actually these days you see, even if you do something at church, the people that come along are the ones we've got relationships with. I think you've got to develop those relationships. You've got to spend time being holy with non-Christians, commending. We're preaching through Mark at the moment, Mark's Gospel, and we were at the end of Mark 9 last week, and where Jesus says salt is good, but if you lose your saltiness, you can't get it back. But there's this idea that actually salt makes people thirsty, and if we go and live as salt in the world amongst non-Christians, we make people thirsty for Christ. So yeah, I think we need to be intentional about the relationships we have outside of church, because they are great opportunities for the gospel.
Have you still not got any access to the chat, Ollie?
No, sorry. If
okay.
You can keep going.
Well, we've probably got time for one more. This is quite a big one, so we may not be able to fully do it justice, but it's just a different question altogether from what we've currently tackled. And this one says, it's from Ben. It says, many churches, especially in the US, have taken a firm stance against lockdown restrictions being imposed upon their church, essentially equating obedience to the government with disobedience to God. What are the panel's thoughts on this issue? Should we be refusing to give up an inch for fear they'll take a mile? As I say, that's a huge question, and will probably cause all sorts of reaction to this. But does anyone want to offer a little bit of wisdom on that? Ollie's gone again.
No, I'm still here.
Okay.
Look, I think we've got to remember the thing that Gavin said. Unity and peace amongst Christians is so important at this time. And I've been really disappointed by some of what I've seen written and said by Christians on either side of these things. And I think, so my chat's just kicked in as Adrian's message has come through. Yeah. If you'd have sent that before I started talking, Adrian, that would have been much more helpful. But I do think we need to really remember that. I've been disappointed by some of the things, if I am not meeting in person and singing, I'm being unfaithful. If I am meeting in person, I'm being reckless. It's just, I think Adrian's right. There is a conscience thing that people need to come to within their local church and what's right for them in their situation. For me, we are not being told we can't preach the gospel. I'm not, that's not the issue there. And I think on the whole, I'm inclined to think this government, although they might not be always right, I don't think they're trying to restrict our ability to worship and preach. I think, look, I wouldn't want to be in government right now making these decisions. They're massive. So I think we need to pray for our government. I think we need to, where we can, submit to them, and I think we need to do what's wise. I think we need to show unity, and I think there is a line. There is a line between being fearful, between being too cautious, and you've got to test out where that line is. And I don't know the answer to where the line is. I think the line changes depending on your situation. Up until the point that we're being told we can't preach the gospel, that's a very clear line. But yeah, sorry, that's a bit waffly, but there we go.
Perhaps just one thing I would add to that, which I think Gavin picked up, is that I would hope that our attitude to government, taking on board the biblical exhortations, particularly from Paul, pray for them, to remember them, to be honest with them, is also key here. I think what's upset me in this debate, and again, I stand with Ollie, I think it's down, to the individual churches and local situations, etc. But I think what's upset me more through this is some of the, let's call it, poor attitude to government. And as Christian men and women, but here we are, men's conference, Christian men, irrespective of what we think. Yeah, they've made mistakes, but who wouldn't? We have to pray for them, and we're to have a positive, right, biblical attitude towards our government. And so, yeah, that's probably what's distressed me more, but I agree with Ollie. I think, unity, this is something not to divide on. It can't possibly be. So let's bear those two senses, two things in mind.
And I think, remember the context where Paul is telling the churches to submit to the authorities, and where he talks about praying for the authorities in Timothy. Like, that's a Roman government. It's a level above what we're being asked to do, and I think we've been a little bit too quick to think we can decide not to. I think we just probably need to think through the context of that more and how that would apply.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add, and I would agree. It's been massively distracting, I think, this debate. Whilst it's, there is, it's right to be thinking and praying about the things. I think we've perhaps wasted, if I can use that, a lot of time on this at the expense of mission, and that's quite sad, isn't it? But yeah, and thank you for all the questions. There's been lots coming in and additional stuff coming in as well around that, and we haven't really got any more time allotted to this, but we do appreciate those questions. We're going to have a short break now. Around about 10 minutes, Steve will put a slide up, I'm sure, and then we'll be coming back with a promo from CVM and a recorded interview with Rob Pickering, who was to have been our speaker this year, but is not obviously in person, but he will be with us next year, so he'll be giving us a little bit of a heads up on that. So enjoy your break, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes.